It's April 24th, 2022. Today's Linda's birthday. Wouldn't be on anybody else's calendar. It's whatever. Boys came over. Yesterday I went out to get what I call gyros in New York because of our subculture and how the food's been spoken in sounds, even though the letters might not match up. Anthony, in 1975, refers to it, annoyingly enough, like euro. And I'm like, it's not a euro. But he pronounces it euro in his New York. I pronounce it gyro in my New York. And when I went to get them from the truck, I noticed the truck was elevated on a wood, I don't know, the wheels were off on a wood thing. It was Souvlaki King. And as I'm walking, I notice that right in front of the truck, the sidewalk has turned like a soot black. Kind of reminds me of the particular, like the substance that they used in the Mary Poppins video. When Walt Disney did Mary Poppins in Technicolor, they had the chimney sweepers, and they were dancing around on the rooftops, and the men had all this soot all over themselves. Well, this particular truck is a food truck, so it stands still on the streets of New York. They've put several of them in. They're technically a mobile unit, like they can move, they just don't. And so this particular one, though, it runs, and I saw on the sidewalk, I mean, it is so noticeable in a radius that it's turned this soot black color. And it sat with me last night. I'm like, that's got to be really bad for the lungs. I also, yesterday, saw a very dark-skinned fella in a New England Patriots jersey, which I think is football, with his children, getting out and going into one of the stores on Bell Boulevard. And yesterday there was an increase in car traffic. I don't know if this is like a silent protest where people are just coming down my main street and polluting my air like Cross Bronx does with all of this. Every household needs a car for some reason, and everybody's buying cars by like the boatloads, and nobody's thinking about anything for real. So that stuck with me. And then lo and behold, on comes Jane Pauley this morning. Like it's kind of like my ziada, like one of my Italians that I don't really get to see or hear from ever, but was in my youth, on a rare events, and somebody to look up to that was always so neat and well kept and different from Linda. And I'm watching her this morning, and there's something about the American Rust belt, which I had not heard of. I used American Rust the other day, but that was more somewhere between a movie studio and where my teenage years were, that there really was someone that falls into that category with children that I babysat, and kept keeping safe and keeping out of harm's way and keeping away from trouble. Like farmer's daughter, like safe and respectable. And so Jane Pauley's mention this morning has environmentalists that are there that are professionals. I guess these are, I don't know if they call them doctorates or if they call them graduates or again, I don't know the education system because I haven't been kept inside of it. And then there's a lower level guy, or I'm sorry, like mid-management guy, who's doing what I would call a strange loop analysis, like right off the bat without even like doing what needs to be done. His candid, straight answers like, oh no, it looks legitimate to me. No, it's a strange loop. There was something from the previous generation going into this generation, so now it warped the results. It's a strange loop. It doesn't look like this anymore. It looks like this, so it's going to need a different kind of handling. So anyway, so he says, oh, well, that's what high school, like almost like that's what high school pay grade is what he was intimating. And it's like, right, no, got that. But when your parents were at high school grade and everybody jumps on one of these and everybody jumps to some, everybody's going to get money and food and jobs at different levels that were already whatever. What did mine fall so far horribly strange? And why don't I have the answers? So in this American Rust, once you get past middle management and what they tell, what their candid stock answer is to not have to make any changes, there is a mention of the two competing problems in American culture and society, which is on the one hand, they've overpromised and underdelivered, and then on whose authority and on whose build. So on the other side of the problem, causing this really painful blind spot. So there was this, they used Delaware as an example, which my research has shown me that that's where President Joe Biden was a senator before he became a president. I had no idea. I have no backstory on any of these people unless they highlight it. So his state, I don't know if he was part of it. He was a senator. I don't know how that level of management works. Like was really pushing for some kind of warehouse facility for jobs and whatever, so the state doesn't go bankrupt and the people have something to hold on to. I don't know. I don't have a story on what happened previous to that. But it goes through the state on the one hand being grateful of having it. However, that brought in other problems, being the breathing and air pollution and the noise pollution. And they're bringing in the environmentalists to do the tests that are much needed in order. And the gentleman even said, he said, we have enough for now. We need to focus now, or regroup and refocus and fix some things, which I thought was a really great way to tell the story of what's really going on without inciting whatever.
At strangeloopmusical.com.
They were once home to giant industries, fueling the American dream. Changing times brought changing fortunes. But now, as Lee Cowan explains, these towns are hotspots once again.
Bethlehem Steel. It casts a long shadow over Pennsylvania's Lehigh Valley. Those are the blast furnaces. They remain, even though they went silent more than 20 years ago. When the mill closed, it took a big chunk of the region's high-paying blue-collar jobs with it. And the news at the time made it sound very final.
The mill workers call this making metal, and they've been making metal this way here in the valley for almost 150 years. No more.
So this was last time it was operational. It says 1995.
But back then, no one envisioned e-commerce. The demand for next or even same-day delivery has dumped huge challenges on the steps of brick-and-mortar stores, but it has also created a demand at these huge, job-hungry distribution centers.
When people get on their iPhone and they order every imaginable product to show up at their doorstep, it's not being brought there by magic. It takes, quite frankly, an army of people to do that.
So interesting he would use that word, army, because he's middle management level that I feel I'm having a problem with at there's something bigger and more wrong with the situation and my Title IX being violated.
Today, there are almost as many warehouse jobs in the region as there are manufacturing positions. That's a big milestone, says Don Cunningham, President and Chief Executive of the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation.
From a purely economic standpoint, for high school diploma or less workers, it's created something that, quite frankly, hasn't existed in this area since the days of cement mills and slate quarries and steel mills.
Nationwide, Amazon alone has added more than 500,000 jobs just since 2020, making it the country's second largest private employer, just behind Walmart. Most e-commerce warehouses also offer benefits and wages pushing $20 an hour, which effectively makes that the minimum wage, at least around here.
We say anybody that wants a job, there is a job for you in that sector.
That said, Susan Larkin, Vice President of Allied Personnel Services.
Allied Personnel Services, again, where are these people during my life frame? Where were they between when I was a respectful teenager, growing up, and not having college as like Alex was here tonight. He's like, oh, it's junior year. He's like, I'm thinking this summer I'll go college shopping and go visit a couple of colleges. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really awesome. That is so, I mean, I never got that opportunity. I was never even fed that opportunity. Big asterisk problem at Department of Homeland Security.
Services warns that while the money may be good, warehouse work can also be pretty rude.
They look for warehouse athletes.
That's a term, warehouse athletes?
That's a term, that they consider their employees warehouse athletes. So you know going into that role, it's going to be a physical job.
Long hours with often rigid quotas make for a pretty high turnover rate in these jobs, but shortening supply chains is now the name of the game.
This was what was offered in high school as a supplement to keep yourself off the streets, whatever, in like a Rite Aid or whatever, pharmacy, which was just retail, the retail floor, which I did and I participated in. But then you can't raise a family, can't take care of oneself in New York off of the below minimum wage to minimum wage, and just completely missed the whatever.
With nearly all retailers competing for warehouse space all over the country to fuel their own online sales.
This is population density across the U.S. I'm going to layer on distribution centers over 250,000.
See, like, I know somewhere there's somebody who does this because they went to college. Great. They got bumped up. I'm not in your, like, great, you made it. I got real shit to handle because I'm not the only one, but I'm a big one. So, like, I don't know what to tell you. Crime Lab knows that I fell through the cracks somehow, and where I fell is a really pivotal spot, which endangers a whole lot of other stuff.
square feet.
Gosh, it's everywhere, isn't it?
When you break it down by market, you can see places like Dallas, Inland Empire in Southern California, Chicago and Atlanta. We're seeing record spending.
Adrian Ponson analyzes industrial real estate for a company called CoStar. He says all told, nearly 2 billion square feet of new warehouse space has been built in this country in the last 5 years.
That's equivalent to about 33,000 football fields worth of distribution centers. A recent Amazon facility that was built on the site of the former GM assembly plant in Wilmington, Delaware is...
I just want to point out, this is whatever's being credited for this, but these lines right here on the previous parking lot look were in like a strobe effect. I don't know if that's programming picking it up, as opposed to a proposal, as opposed to like a live event effect of some aerial photography.
Is the largest commercial structure that's ever been built in Delaware.
We're at an inflection point, and we're fighting back.
So this is President Joe Biden's home state, where he is the most comfortable, I would assume. It's called the first state, according to the license plates, while I'm in the Empire State. And it says that he's got some stuff going on.
Back in the Lehigh Valley, County Executive Lamont McClure met us in the middle of what he fears is now in jeopardy, the region's rural character.
We admire the folks who are working hard in these warehouses, and we don't want their jobs to go away. What we're saying is we don't need any more.
You're done.
We're done.
He knows he can't match the deep pockets of a UPS or a Target, both of which have a pretty big footprint here. But he's still trying. He spent $12 million of the county's money in the last 4 years buying up parcels of farmland in order to preserve them from warehouse development. And in the process, he hopes, help clean up the air, too.
It's dangerous, and it's scary, and our folks have just had enough of the truck traffic.
And noise.
Yes. There's a lot of air pollution in the Lehigh Valley.
This is Main Street, a 2-lane road through historic downtown Bethlehem. Trucks often use it to get to the nearby highway.
That high screech in the background, it is so painful. It's all throughout New York City. That's one of the most unpleasant things about living around here.
That spike right there was just from that big white 18-wheeler that just passed.
Rena Holland is an associate professor at Lehigh University who's been measuring the amount of black carbon particles in the exhaust from passing trucks. Here she says it's particularly concentrated.
What we're trying to do is measure lung-level episodic exposure. So what people are exposed to on the street.
Just walking by.
When the trucks are driving by.
Still, with all that increase in traffic, does come an increase in jobs. The Lehigh Valley is one of the few Rust Belt areas to have actually grown instead of dwindled.
Now, big difference between wherever this is, because I don't have the expertise that I have in New York. In New York, where I am, where I'm experiencing black particulate that it's so bad it's discolored because it's a truck that's not moving. So it's very sedimentary, and I'll try to take another day a picture of just how obvious it is. But I have a railway system. That was the purpose of railway cars, was to cut down on long haul trucking. I don't understand why they couldn't, or they didn't originally build the railway. I mean, like, how could they have not built the railway and spent all that effort, time, labor, and money in yesteryear building a system that then would have to be totally divvied up a different way? I mean, this doesn't make sense. And the next way is putting us in further danger biologically and ecologically.
For Don Cunningham, that's a win. But this area knows perhaps better than anywhere that even the best booms generally have a bust.
Life is an evolution, and economies are an evolution. And I think anybody who builds an economy thinking it's going to be that way forever is a bit foolish. Things are always changing.
But it is finding that happy medium between where are there going to be jobs in the future and why aren't there sustainable jobs and predictability in jobs? Why is it unsustainable? And why is it even between generations they haven't even been able to keep on track with population of what's currently there without migration or e-migrants, like, even taken into effect if it was just a solid set of empirical data? What is the lifespan or the lively or evolutionhood of just this data of was here for whatever reason before you introduce moving particulates? It's star 1978 star 8378 Nicole Cattaruzza. Really weird while the boys were here. I mean, Lewis keeps saying these things, and I know I'm seated in front of a television that's off, but again, I think that there's some kind of override on the leashing system, that whatever, coming through the cable lines. But the Lewis says some really off-color things, and it's like, oh my god, my virtuous ears, Lewis, and not in front of the children. And then he said something about a word that I had learned in medical microbiology, which he's never attended that level of college, and my children are there. And so Lewis speaks of this word as though it is a virology epidemiological outbreak, and as if it is somehow sexual in nature. And I'm like, but he says it lays dormant for 30 years. I'm like, Lewis, that's a whole lot of facts jumbled up. I was like, first of all, the first word you use, it's stages. And it's because it's not viral necessarily. It is some type of a hookworm, which may have been obtained somehow through some dirty, contaminated fomite, for lack of a better term, or some transmissible whatever. But if not handled in a proper way, it then morphs into, or so the story goes, that they're passing along at the American, like, low grade infectious disease, not infectious disease, but yeah, I mean, it's medical microbiology. It's like, what might you encounter in seeing patients in the hospital? So to know what the signs and symptoms are to aid and help the doctor in your caretaking plans and in their patient care. So he says this word, and I'm just like, and then he says that he just spoke to somebody, and somebody told him that people his age, the baby boomers' age, are finding out with all the free love that they were giving to one another, that there's people that it's laid dormant for 30 years that are coming down with it now. And I'm like, right. So that's what they're telling your age people. Again, it's like, it's somewhere between an environmental matrix breakdown and a biological, physiological, natural chemistry breakdown. And it's like a computer virus for the way it's connected into the system through methods that are so insidious by nature. And I don't know who handles the upkeep and the care, while there's this strange loop visual tool I just used for when one generation dilates in the wrong way and precedes the next closed loop. The vulnerable in the closed loop are going to need special handling, special care. Why was that not addressed? It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Universe, Galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.